Welcome back to Green Disruptors. I'm your host, Megan Kjar. Today I'm joined by Brad Stutzman, founder and CEO of O3 Energy, a renewable energy services company that's been pioneering distributed solar projects for over 12 years. From navigating the early challenges of solar financing to building large-scale commercial and industrial projects, Brad and his team are helping accelerate the clean energy transition across the U.S. and beyond. In this conversation, we'll dive into the evolution of solar financing, the future of microgrids, resilience in Texas, and how misinformation continues to shape the renewable energy industry. Hi, Brad. Thanks for joining us on Green Disruptors today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Megan.
Yeah, my pleasure. Tell us about who you are. I mean, we've had the intro, but tell us your background a little bit.
I'm founder and CEO of O3 Energy. O3 Energy is a renewable energy services company. We've been around for about 12 years now. Started off focusing on the financing and development of small utility scale solar projects and CNI solar projects, so rooftop, canopies, things like that. Over the years, we added a residential side to the company. We've since closed that residential side to the company and went back to our bread and butter, which was the development of distributed assets. Myself, I've been in the industry for a little over 15 years now, so seeing the ups and downs that we've had. And
the solar coaster.
Yeah, the solar coaster. Everybody loves that term. So
yeah. So where are you located? Both the business and you personally?
Yeah, in Dallas, Texas. So
okay.
We're our office is right downtown, and I live probably about 5 or 6 blocks away.
So are you a native Texan?
I am not a native Texan. I'm a Navy brat, and my family ended up here whenever I was young and just stayed here ever since.
Okay, very cool. So tell me kind of back when you started the company, what were some of the pain points that you noticed that made you realize that there was a good opportunity for solutions there?
Yeah, so our main focus has always been, and my main focus has always been the deployment of solar and how quickly we can get renewable energy deployed. One of the main things that we need to do is get away from fossil fuels. I look at it as an evolution of our grid, and that's always been the main focus of the company. How quickly can we get renewable energy deployed across the U.S.? And so when creating O3 Energy, main focus, we started off just looking at how we can bring in financing to projects, and then little by little added on to our overall offering, development services coming in, construction, and then just becoming more and more vertically integrated to take on more and more pieces of the overall projects.
Okay, so let me gather my thoughts here for a second. So, I mean, I've talked to a lot of startups and people who are wanting to do solar projects, and I think you hit it on the nose that financing is the number one problem when you're starting. So, like, what kind of solutions do you have that are helping these projects get off the ground, and how is that different now compared to when you started?
So whenever we started, there were not a whole lot of, I guess, the financing solutions for CNI projects were not as in-depth as they are now. We had PPAs, and that's what we were offering. But as far as the ability to analyze the credit risk of CNI projects, there weren't a whole lot of groups out there that were able to do that. Now you see a bit more. But at the time, there weren't a lot. And even at the time, whenever we got started, there weren't a whole lot of financing options for residential solar either. Those people forget that those, even though they've been around for a while, it hasn't been more than, I would say 7 to 10 years that you've really
Yeah.
seen an uptake in, financing for solar on the distributed side of things. So that was our main offering is coming in. We came in and really attacked projects that were a little bit more what we called scratch and dent projects. So projects that may have had a little bit of hair on them, or were outside of the typical box
Like they
that
may have gotten rejected initially or
right.
weren't looking good.
Yeah, yeah, or it was something that was just a little bit different. Banks are very risk averse, and don't they have their box that it has to fit right in here, and if not, then we're not gonna get outside of those guidelines for anything. And so we would figure out ways to mitigate the risk and come in and attack those projects. And then some of the things may have been in territories that other banks traditionally weren't willing to go into. We attacked a portfolio of projects on the island of Guam, and now you're seeing more and more groups financing out there. But at the time, there weren't nobody was financing CNI projects out there. So we came in with a PPA and attacked some projects on the island.
So are you able to do business like internationally, or are you sticking within U.S. territories?
So it's interesting that you said that. We set up a division or an entity of the company in Mexico a few years back. With us being in Texas, Mexico is, just
Your neighbor.
right there. So, and Texans, we've done a lot of business in Mexico. It just goes back and forth. It's very common. And so we set up an entity in Mexico to attack some CNI projects down in Mexico. With the last administration that came into Mexico, they really attacked renewables. They attacked energy as a whole. There were a lot of utility scale PPAs that were signed that the last administration just came in and nixed as soon as they came in. Over the first 3 years of that administration, because the terms in Mexico are 6 years instead of
Okay.
4 here, like here in the U.S. So,
Well,
so yeah,
that's a bright side for us,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess.
So the administration came in, and for the first 3 years in Mexico, wasn't adding any new generation to the grid because they had nixed all those PPAs. So the second 6 years of the term, they were really having issues. Or I'm sorry, the second 3 years of the term, they were really having issues with generation down there. The real estate was continuing to be built. There was more load going onto the grid. And so they started having a lot of rolling blackouts. They're having a lot of issues in Mexico right now with their grid. And so with the new president that's come in, there's been a big push to and a big focus on renewables. So we've started seeing a lot of the projects that got killed under the last administration now starting to move forward. They've upped, they changed some of the guidelines, like behind the meter projects in Mexico. You were only able to go up to 500 kilowatts per meter. Now they bumped that up to 700. So they're getting a little bit more favorable. And these facilities that are down there understand that there's a need for electricity, and they've seen the rolling blackouts. And so a lot of them are wanting on-site generation themselves. So we've been seeing more and more projects in Mexico.
Interesting. Well, I think the Texas-Mexico relationship is interesting to think about in terms of it's a view of what's going on everywhere, but maybe there's some extreme cases in both, Texas and Mexico. So if you can solve the problems there, it's a good case study for everywhere else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. I mean, we're
Case in
seeing a lot
point,
of this
yeah.
shake up here in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
With the one big beautiful bill that just went through.
Yeah. Well, I was saying when you were saying that about Mexico, I'm like, it's just the pendulum swing of politics. It's like, let's get rid of it, let's bring it back. But It's like if we could consistently be putting action towards, getting renewables all across the grid and being able to expand the grid to meet ever rising demand and, emission reduction, all that. Like it's just seems silly to back off on something that makes so much sense, both from an economic standpoint and from a climate standpoint. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest, issues right now that we're going to run into in the U.S. is all the data centers that are coming
Yeah.
online, right?
Oh, yeah.
And AI. I mean, those things just
They
suck
eat power.
electricity.
Yeah.
And I know here in Texas, Texas has been one of the biggest states for bringing in data centers,
Yeah.
and they're building, I believe it's called Stargate, the big, it's supposed to be the largest AI facility out there in West Texas. So, they're expecting a lot of load on the grid here. ERCOT just came out with their study of the next 5 to 10 years, and people are looking at it saying it's unsustainable. There's no way that they're going to be able to
Yeah.
keep up with the load that's going on the grid. So the quickest deployable form of energy generation right now is solar.
Yeah.
So, no matter what, how you look at it, from a political standpoint, whether or not you believe in climate change, you don't believe in climate change.
It's
Let's,
economics. It's
yeah,
supply and demand.
exactly. Yeah. So let's
Hmm.
look at it from that standpoint. And, I personally don't understand how technology ever got politicized to the way it is now. But
Well, we love to politicize everything these
yeah,
days, which is ridiculous, including
that's a
breakfast
very
cereal.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we could step away from that, I think we'd have a lot healthier conversations and be able to be willing to do our research before you pick a side. It's like I like to live in the gray middle personally, but
I think the majority of the U.S. does,
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, like I'm not unique, and like most of the people I talk to seem to have a lot of common sense and are willing to be educated. But
Yeah.
anywho, that's veering off the topic, but still very interesting. Um, so back to you guys. I would love to know, you're doing these large commercial projects. That's a interesting, I guess it's an interesting problem from a marketing perspective because with giant sized contracts and bids and all this, like you have to have a very strong relationship and trust factor with these companies. So tell me how you navigate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all about building the relationships and setting proper expectations, right? Some of our sales cycles, maybe a year, 2 years. I mean, we're installing some projects now that we started, a little over 2 years ago. Some USDA REAP grant projects. So, the process of sitting down with the customer years ago, going through the overall idea of what they wanted on site, putting together a proposal, getting that proposal signed, then going through the whole process of the REAP grant with the USDA. It's been a good year and a half before we
Hmm.
even got to the point wherever we're procuring and installing the system. So it is a long sales cycle and a long install cycle. And so it's just, keeping that. The one thing that I've found is the more we can communicate with customers, the better. It's all about communication. Whenever they don't hear from you for a little while, they don't see you on site and trying to figure out what's going on. It's better to be proactive and send out that communication on a weekly basis. We also try to we have a customer portal where our customers can log in and see what's going on with their
Nice. Yeah.
project, have all that communication as well in one spot. It makes it a little bit easier for all that communication going back and forth.
Yeah, I think that's true. Kind of live by whenever you're speaking with a customer, you always need to know when the next time you're going to be speaking to them is. Like, get the meeting scheduled, get the email sent. Like, you never
Right.
want to leave people in the dark. So smart.
Yeah, and then it also keeps all the documents and everything in one spot, right?
That's a beautiful thing. I was going to ask you kind of what's your general outreach strategy? I mean, you've been in business a long time. I'm sure you've, you know, it's typical for businesses to start with just their network and word of mouth. Like, where are you at now?
Yeah, so I mean, it has definitely evolved over the years, and I don't necessarily think that's just due to the way a business grows. I also think it's due to trends, technology,
Yeah. Oh,
all
yeah.
of that. So, yeah, so, starting off, it's definitely just word of mouth, who's in my network that I can reach out to. Now it's still word of mouth, but, adding, other layers on, we do some advertising online, B2B that, Google ads, things like that aren't necessarily as good, we've found. But you still want to have a little bit of a presence,
Presence.
right? So, we do that. Also, a lot of outreach. Our SDRs do outreach through, LinkedIn, some of the other platforms. But definitely the best is always going to be referrals, right?
Oh, yeah.
People actually seeing what you've done and hearing from their friends or from colleagues, these guys did this for us. So that's always been the best for us.
Yeah. So, on that note of referrals and growth, do you guys have any kind of goals or initiatives coming up in the next year that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our main focus until now has always been, how can we deploy more renewable energy on site? Now, what we're looking at is not just that, but how can we make the properties that we're working with more independent,
Mm.
independent of the grid?
And
Um,
microgrids.
exactly, microgrids. Also, how can we reduce the overall consumption on the site as well? So we're adding those to our product mix. And, I think it's going to be really beneficial, not just for the growth of the company, but for our customers as well. Texas just rolled out a really large fund, $1.8 billion.
I heard about that.
Yeah, for resilience. And that's for hospitals, senior living.
Places that can't afford to have a blackout.
Right, exactly. They can't afford to have a blackout. And it's the perfect time because there are concerns about blackouts from the data centers, from the AI.
Yeah, they're gonna steal it from everybody else. Yeah,
Yeah, so
guilty.
it's
I'm sitting here using AI on the daily for sure, but
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I am too. What was the thing they just put out? They said don't, add extra words like thank you because it uses a bunch of extra computing power, which in turn drives, more electricity usage and things like that. So don't be
that's
nice to your
hilarious.
AI.
I had a moral debate of if I should be polite to AI because I was starting to feel like a slave driver, but it's better for the planet for me to be as
Yeah,
direct as
exactly.
possible.
So be rude to your AI.
That'll be our main clip takeaway. Like, what is this episode about?
Yeah, but so yeah, traditionally the concerns mainly have been weather blackouts, right? Increased weather events, and now it's increased demand on the grid, which is causing some of these rolling blackouts. So that's why we need resilience here in Texas, and I think that's a trend across the nation. I don't necessarily think it's just
Yeah.
here in Texas.
I mean, I think you guys in Texas are doing a great job of talking about it right now. It's like I'm hearing a lot of that resilience coming from Texas, which is very cool. But I mean, everybody has those problems. It's just, are we distracted by other stuff enough to not be, tackling it as hard as you guys are? So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's always everybody always talks about it out here. Texas is typically about a year or two behind on trends, that you'll
mhm.
see on the coast, east and west coast. But whenever it gets to Texas, we're going to blow it up and do it big, because everything's done bigger here
Texas
in
style.
Texas.
Yeah. Hmm.
And you saw the same thing with solar. It was a little late to get to Texas. Texas was always a huge wind energy state because at the time, wind energy was cheaper than solar
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
But now with the cost coming down, and then you've seen it over the past few years, Texas is now the second largest solar state
Yeah.
for capacity, and that happened within like 3 or 4 years. You
You
know,
probably could have predicted that, but I was
yeah,
surprised.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
everybody was talking about it. Whenever it gets here, it's going to be done big. So
Yeah. Very cool. Utah's a weird morph between like we're ahead on a lot of things and then like way behind on others. Every place is so unique, but
Yeah.
okay. So you've got, all these big resiliency microgrid goals. Who is the perfect partner or candidate to work with you with this type of a project? Like, obviously any large scale corporate thing, but is there someone in particular that's the best?
I would say heavy power users. We've come up with a lot of different solutions for different types of properties. Every type of property has its own unique characteristics. One of the things that we've been rolling out here is our new product, which we call the solar split. Traditionally, multifamily properties have not been able to necessarily capitalize on multifamily and multi-tenant properties, haven't been able to capitalize on on-site generation or solar. And that's typically because their tenants are paying the electricity. Yeah, so with our solar split model, the building owner can basically divide up and split up the electricity to each one of their tenants and bill accordingly. And so the tenants can get the usage out of the electricity from the solar array, but then the building owner isn't necessarily he's able to recoup he or she is able to recoup their investment in the array. So it's not that they're just investing to put solar on the property for their common areas. They can build a big enough array where everyone can use it, but they can recoup the cost of that investment as well. So,
That seems like a probably pretty untapped market. Is that right?
yeah, it seems like because traditionally you've only been able to really build an array for those common areas, and
Right.
what we've seen, that's really only about 10 to 20% of the overall consumption of the entire property.
Yeah.
So, it really limits the size of the arrays that have been put on those properties.
Hmm. Cool. So, maybe we can kind of wrap it up by my last question here. If you could solve one problem in terms of, like in the business, obviously not like culturally, but one problem in the business, if you could solve it magically, what would that be?
Ooh, one problem in the business magically. Um,
Or realistically? I guess maybe we don't have to employ magic, but
you know, unfortunately, I think it's a problem that isn't just unique to our business. I think it's a problem that's unique to our industry,
mm-hmm.
and that is having to re-educate customers
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's so much misinformation that's put out there through the news, through, what people have heard from, their friend, or, just there's so much misinformation out there. It's coming in and re-educating on technology.
Yeah, because like you said, if I hadn't have been talking to people like you, I would assume that the costs were still what they were 10 years ago. Like, how would I know? And I'm sure a lot of people are naive to what the output actually can be and what the cost savings are and how quick you can pay off your investment. So there's a lot of that for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And unpoliticizing it.
yeah, definitely unpoliticizing it. And every property is different. It's not a one size fits all solution. We run into that all the time. People calling, I have 20,000 square feet. How much solar do I need? It's like, well, it doesn't work that way.
I'm running a mini data center out of my living room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, who knows what kind of loads you have just off of your square footage, like
I
look at the
host
loads.
daily video gaming
Yeah.
meetups, and
Look
I
at the
have 7
loads.
TVs.
Assess everything, the orientation of the building as well,
Yeah.
for what kind of production you can get out of an array. So, every site is a little bit different, and it's educating the customer as to what you can actually do for that site versus what they talk about on TV, or, the negatives.
Yeah. Well, I think that could be an opportunity in disguise because the fact that you need to customize is a relationship building avenue. It's like, hey, well, let's talk, let's learn about what you need, and that can be a way to build trust as well. So
Yeah,
sounds
absolutely.
like,
It's always
yeah,
great.
sounds like you guys are on the right track and making a dent in this race we're all trying to get to. So appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, it was fun having you on. And if someone wants to get in touch with you guys, what's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with us would be online through our website, o3energy.com. It's the letter O, the number 3, energy.com. Also through social media. We have a lot of groups that follow us on social media and reach out through that as well. All of our taglines are the same thing, O3 Energy. So, Instagram's at O3 Energy, Twitter at O3 Energy, just right across the board.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Brad, and we'll be looking forward to hearing how things go.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, Megan.
Yeah, my pleasure. That's it for today's episode of Green Disruptors. A huge thank you to Brad Stutzman for sharing his insights on the solar industry and O3 Energy's mission to make renewable power more accessible and resilient. If you'd like to learn more about their work, visit o3energy.com or follow them on social media at O3Energy. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next conversation with leaders driving the future of sustainability.